Welcome to the Cyber Agony Aunt podcast series, brought to you by your very own cyber aunties, me, Amelia Hewitt.
And me, Rebecca Taylor. We're here to tackle the most pressing questions that arise throughout your cyber career with a selection of very special guests.
Think of us as your very own mentors, confidants, and cheerleaders, your agony aunts for surviving your career.
Hello and welcome back to our festive special.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas, baby. How have you been?
I have been good. It's a very, very busy time of year for work, which is great, and you shouldn't complain. But I want to do my Christmas shopping. I want to get ready and get everything sorted.
Well, I am that person. I'm proud of being this person, but I am Romeo Dunn. I am shopped. I bought the wrapping paper yesterday. I just need to wrap all those bad boys and then I'm finished. Smashed it.
I like that. I like to think I'm that person, but actually when I think about it, I'm probably not.
I also keep an Excel spreadsheet. There's a top tip, listeners. An Excel spreadsheet of everything that I've bought by a person so that when I see it, I know, that gift is for this person. Because there's a lot of kids in my life to remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm feeling pretty proud of myself.
Good. I'm very glad. So for this episode, we have invited a very close friend of the Cyber Agony Aunt family. This person has had a fabulous career pathway, which we'll touch upon shortly, and is leaving an incredible legacy in cyber with their support of a well-known not-for-profit.
I wonder who. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So I am Zak Layton-Elliott. I am part of CyberAid. I'm the Director of Partnerships there. That's me.
So before we set the scene for the podcast, it would be fab, Zak, if you could share a little bit about your career pathway and how you got your foot in the cyber door.
Absolutely. So I didn't go down the traditional route, which I imagine a lot of people have done during going through university and stuff like that. I started out as an IT account manager, working with the education sector, and decided that it wasn't really for me. I had a look around and I found Caps Lock, which is a cybersecurity boot camp. It's a 6-month course which I took part-time while I was still working, and went through it and got my CISMP exam at the end of that, as well as some other ones which I did later on after that. From then, I found I was looking for work in cyber, and I was sent in the direction of Principal Defence. And I spoke to the owner, Jim, and we had a conversation. We had a catch up about how things were working. And at the time, it was still a very small organisation. There was only 2 people in the company at the time. And I had a conversation, had an interview, and from there, I started working back in. That was January of this year, so I've been there all of almost 11 full months now, and it's been really good. And then going back a bit, I also obviously joined CyberAid while I was still going through Caps Lock. And I started out originally as a volunteer working with clients, and then I went into my role now, which is Director of Partnerships, and I still do a bit of both on either side of it. And that's my kind of segue into the world of cyber.
I think it's amazing that you've definitely just jumped in and gone for it, because a lot of people, there is that nervousness, especially when they're trying to make that transition and get that foot in the door of, I don't want to tread on toes, I'm not really sure where to start. I think it's also really important to show again that you haven't been down that traditional STEM pathway of sort of the STEM at school, then doing the university degree, because again, I think that's admirable, and anything to show that you can be in cyber and you don't have to come from that traditional pathway is really, really good news.
Yeah, and the eagle-eared amongst our listeners will note that I work with Zak at both CyberAid and Principal Defence, which was completely unintentional. Zak actually joined Principal Defence before I did. And now we work in the same team and we have great fun in the consulting team. So it's definitely been really interesting to see your journey, and a huge part of the success I think you've had at CyberAid is because of the skills you learned within your career in IT and sales, like customer success management, stakeholder management. All of those skills are so necessary in cyber consulting, yet they're things that I don't think we're valuing enough. So I think that in itself just shows that those are really transferable skills that actually make you very good at what you do at CyberAid. And, now Zak's on the board of CyberAid, and he's, a big part of our organisation's function, and our clients absolutely love him and his adorable puppy Mars. So that certainly helps.
I did consider bringing him today.
So today's episode is our Christmas special.
Ho, ho, ho.
And we want to talk about, I thought she was going to start singing, the season of giving. We all want to do our bit to support the community, and the cyber industry itself is very generous with their time and support. I mean, we've seen that through Cybaid, we see it with the mentoring that Rebecca's involved in. Everyone has a big old heart. So we want to share more about how you can be involved and talk about life in the charity and not-for-profit sector, and do a bit of festive myth-busting.
I'm excited for this episode.
Me too.
I love a bit of giving back. And like Amelia said, a lot of people in cyber are very, very generous. So I think there's lots we can learn from you, lovely Zak. So first question for you. Can you tell us what drew you to supporting charities and small businesses with their cyber needs, and what you've learnt during your time at Cybaid that may inspire some of our listeners?
Absolutely. So I think Amelia's kind of touched upon a bit why I was probably quite a good fit to go into Cybaid, especially from my career with IT sales and the account management and relationship management and all of that good stuff. So it gave me a good segue in. It made me feel, while I was still obviously in a cyber role, it was a good kind of segue, and it was able to make me feel comfortable in the actual industry, in my own little kind of section to begin with, where I could help with the clients kind of onboarding and making sure that they were comfortable and their needs were attended to. So yeah, education sector that working with isn't kind of a million miles away from working with charities. They have kind of similar strengths and weaknesses and same issues they're sort of facing. And yeah, being able to understand the position that they're in is very beneficial to help them get to where they want to be and achieve their goals and that sort of stuff. Yeah, as I said, they have like similar sorts of like strengths and weaknesses, like the funding and the resourcing and the support that's available to them is both, I suppose, a strength and a weakness in terms of you can get grants and you can get, you have your own staff and all of that, but sometimes being able to get them is double-edged sword in the fact that, it might be quite hard to secure that at the same time. In terms of what I've learnt, Cybaid's kind of helped me gain experience, obviously working in cyber. I feel like it's a very big thing, especially as I was looking for my first role in cyber coming like through Caps Lock. Yeah, kind of having my name down on something and being able to say that I am part of Cybaid and this is my role here has kind of given me a bit of a, not a name, well, it's given me a name, but not a name, but I can put myself in a situation where I can say that I've actually been involved in it and have experience. It's also kind of being able to be involved in working with more experienced volunteers has kind of given me a bit of insight into how they would operate their mindset during different piece of like consulting work, even if it's only very small with a charity, and like at the very beginning of their kind of cyber journey. It's a great way of kind of thinking about the process that they would take to kind of get into it and give me that extra bit of experience. And then on the SLT side, it's kind of exposed me to a different side of things where I can see how they might, one, how Cybaid operates itself, but also how they might operate from their similar sort of leadership kind of standpoint. So there's different ways of doing it. And on top of that, it's helped me grow my network massively. I've met loads of people through it. As I said, I've been able to kind of put my name down and say that I've been part of it so that people can recognise me. And then from that, they've then, decided to have a little chat with me, and it's been good from there.
Good. I mean, interestingly, so Rebecca was on the board of Cybaid when we first started, and Zak, you're on the board now, and I as the founder. I think that was something that none of us anticipated, was actually a whole new level of empathy for what our clients are experiencing. And I never thought about that having come from the cyber industry. So it's really interesting that you say that as well, is that my experience was always around commercial business and always around quite big organisations, and especially in the public sector, where funding wasn't really an issue that we came across, or how to run a volunteer organisation was not something we'd come across. So it definitely gives you an added layer of compassion when you're having to think about funding and having to think about volunteer experiences and creating a culture of inclusivity, but also a culture where people can develop their skills. And that was something we always said was a really big thing at Cybaid, was we want people to be able to nurture their cybersecurity skills, but also their consultancy skills. And so I'm glad that you're a sort of shining example of someone who can do that.
I think it's a really good tip, actually, is that whilst particularly you are job hunting, or if you're in that field where you've maybe done a course like Caps Lock and then you're trying to secure that next position, there's something to be said for volunteering during that time, or studying or learning particular areas of what would interest you, because it just adds the depth and breadth when you are then applying for roles that you have used what you've learned and been able to apply it. So
Yeah.
I think anything that keeps the ball rolling, that keeps you tuned in, that, like Zach said, allows you to network and meet people. Because again, cyber, good or bad, everyone kind of does know everyone.
Yeah,
And
massively.
so, very much so. So actually building that network right from the start can really amplify your choices when you are making those career moves, amplify your own brand, and just help you with the applications, because you will stick out potentially above other candidates.
For sure. And I think, and I'm sure this is something, Zach, you'll cover later on, when we talk about volunteering, particularly in the context of cyber, it's not always delivery. It's not always providing cyber consultancy, because there is something to be said for, you cannot just walk into the industry on day one and give out advice, because you probably don't have the requisite knowledge, or if you do, it's applying it and that kind of thing. And that can be really tricky from a liability perspective for us. But actually what we found is there is so much more to running a cybersecurity organisation than just delivering cyber. And actually some of the volunteers that have worked with us and gone on to secure jobs where we've been able to give them reference have done things like content development, service line development. They're still applying their skills, but it's in a lower stakes environment where they're not necessarily putting themselves in a position where they might be uncomfortable, they might not have an answer, and that's also what shadowing is for. And I think that's been a programme that has worked really well at Cybaid.
It's that first myth bust, isn't it? Cyber's not just technical. There you go.
Okay, so I think we've got a good idea of some context and why you're involved in Cybaid. And I like that, actually, that it was twofold, that, you know, you could see the need for it and also that there were personal reasons behind that. And I think that's really important to be transparent about. So talking about misconceptions, what misconceptions do people have about cybersecurity in the not-for-profit and charity sector from what you've seen?
Lots. I think the obvious one, which you probably don't want to skip, is that just because a charity is small or an organisation is small doesn't mean that they're not going to get attacked. It's obviously it's such a common, I know, stupid answer, but there's so many of them think that because they're small, because there's only a couple of people in their team, or they don't do that much, either at the moment because they're only starting out or because they are just a small organisation, that they're not going to attack. And unfortunately, it's not true. But so, yeah, that's number one. Another thing is, a different side of it is that during a lot of the calls I have with clients, they always ask about costs and stuff like that. And depending on what they want to do, is obviously if they want to go for a certification or achieve a standard, there probably are going to be costs in terms of the auditing and stuff like that. But we're not trying to swindle you, or we're not trying to upsell you in any way. There's no kind of cost to it. And it's not as much a misconception as just they can't believe that something like that exists. And Cybaid does exist. They're not sure on numbers, but there are others out there which do similar sorts of things that we've seen. So, yeah, no, it's something that we're here to help, and we want to kind of provide the support, and we don't want to kind of take advantage. One thing at the moment that I'm working on with Cybaid is we're currently conducting a pilot programme in Scotland for our first group of volunteers and charities to kind of not break into Scotland literally, but break out into the space, because we've been doing so well in England. And having those conversations during those check-in calls and during like the onboarding calls and stuff like that with the charities, they're always so appreciative of what we do and so amazed that support like this does this. And it's very heartwarming to kind of have those conversations and just hear their thanks. Yeah.
That's lovely. I'm really glad to hear, A, that that's going well, because that's something Zach has been independently leading on, and B, like it's so heartwarming, isn't it, to just hear that what you're doing has impact and is appreciated. And the number of conversations we've had, like I know the three of us have had with people about Cybaid, where you're like, no, it is free. Like that's what we do, and that's our model. And we've done a lot to make sure that it stays that way, in terms of we've got really good contractual governance so that non-solicitation is in place with our volunteers, unless it's something that, you know, a charity specifically asks for sort of upsold services. But I'm really glad that that comes across so well, because it is really common to see things where, well, it's a free assessment, but you give them your details and then you get hounded by salespeople to buy things. And I never wanted that to be the case. I always want Cybaid to be free for end clients.
I love that. And I think that's really important. And that's why you're doing what you're doing. And that's why a lot of cybersecurity professionals are supporting and rallying what you do, because they want to give back, and everyone deserves the right, regardless of the organisational size, to be cyber safe and to not be victims of attack or victims of cybercrime. I remember Amelia and I doing a project, so we both met on Empowering You, which a lot of you will already know. And one of the projects we had there was to look at charities and how cybersecurity applied to them and some of their gaps or concerns, this kind of thing. And one of the myths that we had to bust quite early on was I think a lot of people believed that maybe charities and their view of cybersecurity, it was very low on their list.
Yeah.
That it wasn't really a thing. They weren't really as bothered about it. But I think charities and small businesses are concerned about cyber. It's in the press all the time now. The stories are becoming more accessible, actionable. There's much more of a present threat, I think, for these types of organisations. It's just that for a lot of them, they didn't know where to start and they didn't have the support. And I think that's what makes CyberAid extra special.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing I took from that project as well is it's a lot more political than you sort of would think. And someone else said it to me recently when we were talking about focus areas for growth as part of next year's strategy, is, well, there's a lot happening in the world at the moment and there's a lot of organisations that are working around, causes that I wouldn't consider to be contentious, but might be contentious in the wider sort of societal conversation. And there are a lot of charities supporting those organisations that are now targets.
Yeah.
And that was something that came up like years ago when we had the threat briefing around the charity sector, that there are specific threat actors who will target organisations working with specific groups. And that was something that, you wouldn't think about if you weren't in that sector, because you think, well, a threat actor wants to go after the Marks and Spencers of the world, the JLRs of the world. And actually, it's not always about financial gain and extortion. Sometimes it's about stealing data. Sometimes it's about, extorting people into taking action that's harmful towards others. Cybercrime is not necessarily about let's make money on ransom. And so I think that's a big misconception that I maybe had about the sector, was that it was almost, why would anyone want to target them sort of thing.
Yeah, it's hard to watch, but it's important to recognise, and it's important for any organisation this Christmas to to understand that it's not if, it's when, and that's why you have to be prepared. You have to be leveraging what you have around you to be cyber safe, cyber secure, reaching out to organisations like CyberAid if you do need support, leveraging all those beautiful resources that are available online, because we have to be safe and we have to do what we can to protect ourselves as individuals, but also the organisations that we work for. So moving swiftly on, I think we will go on to the next question. Zak, again, what are a few simple but powerful cybersecurity steps that small businesses or charities could take right now, particularly to stay safe over the Christmas season?
I feel that I may have been harping on a little bit about my answer to this sort of question, but Cyber Essentials is an excellent sort of place, I think, to start. If you're a small charity or a small organisation that doesn't quite have your cybersecurity kind of mindset in place, then having a look at the requirements and the controls that are on that can be incredibly useful. And even if it's not something that you're going for or you're ready to go for, that's the sort of like guide baseline. That's why it's called Cyber Essentials, because it's sort of the essential requirements to aim for. And it's a great place to start. Some specific things which are probably pretty standard, hopefully by now. MFA, make sure you've got it on everything for everyone, even for your own personal stuff as well. There's no reason not to have it. It's so easy to set up, and it's so quick to log in. Even if you do have it, it's not very intrusive at all. In terms of an organisation as well, make sure you have a look at the NCSE's password principles, password requirements, and chuck them into a password policy, I should say, which is the 3 random words, 12 letters or 12 characters, and put them in a random order of a random amount of capitals or whatever it is. But make sure you kind of got something along the lines of that. As well as kind of just general governance for your organisation. So around the secure working for your employees, preventative measures they can take when they're working in kind of a public place, making sure they know when not to kind of share access either with any of their credentials for their devices or any logins or any documents that you may have. And where they can work, where they should be working, stuff like that. And then making sure, obviously, I think a very simple one, but updating devices. If there's a nice red little box at the bottom, then do click on it, do press update. It's a good thing to do. There's also lots of free training resources that are available, especially the NCSC. Check that out and have a look, see what they can offer. And it's definitely worth undertaking.
I think that's a good point, particularly when it is maybe a slower time of year, when people are winding down, there's less of those sales calls or things coming through the door, to pursue other options like training and learning and development. Two things that I wanted to call out is charities at this time of year, it can be a little bit tricky, where threat actors, cyber criminals are conscious that people are wanting to give more and are wanting to donate money or gifts or whatever it might be. So if charities can keep a closer eye out on maybe where their name is being used or maybe where people are being manipulated to maybe giving or donating using that charity's name. There's lots of ways you can do that, but even just having keywords and alerts when your organisation's name appears, I think that's really important. And another one, which, and it's only because of lived experience, is people stop working, at least in organisations, not in cybercrime, over Christmas.
Yeah, the threat actors are not taking time off.
Yeah, they're not so bothered about Christmas, although it does get a little bit quieter, believe it or not. But to have your communication plan in place and ready, reflective of who is available and who is around to make decisions. So if something does happen over the festive period when Dave is in the Bahamas, so you can't reach him, at least you know who is around, who can support, what their latest contact details are. Just check in that before the holiday season hits so that at least you can react if you have to.
Yeah, for sure. I think both of you make fantastic points. I think Cyber Essentials, I saw a statistic the other day, and I will butcher it, and I know certain people who will message me after listening to this and tell me I've got it wrong, but it's designed to prevent something like 94% of the most common sorts of attacks. So that's things that could be, subverted if you didn't have MFA or credential theft and things like that. And so in my mind, why would you not? And I think a lot of organisations that come to us for Cyber Essentials come to us because they have an external driver for it. So, for example, if you want to get onto any government frameworks to provide services, you often have to have it. But I think just looking at it and applying those principles, it's free to download the PDF and the controls, and just looking to start implementing them, even if you have no aspiration of actually getting the certification, is super important. And the training piece, I think, is really key, because quite often I'm seeing with organisations we work with, they'll have generic cyber training that they do once a year. Mm-hmm. And we know that some of the biggest attacks that have happened this year have been the result of social engineering or phishing or any form of social engineering. And so I think it's really important, especially now when we all start to wind down a bit, to remind people. And what we encourage as part of the training we develop at SciBaid is to do it quite modularly, is that a word? Do it in a modular fashion, whereby they are going to do a small amount every few months, or at sort of busier periods or the festive period, where we know that the threats change a lot. And we did a campaign last year on our social media around festive threats and what would come up and what to be aware of. And payment scams are rife at this time of year. So I think it's making people aware continually, and that's what that's our job. We do that at SciBaid, and we have a lot of collateral that can be reused, and there's a lot available online. But it's making sure that it's not an afterthought, it's just a part of how you run your organisation. Okay, so next question. And I think we've probably covered it a little bit, but Zak, I'm interested to hear what you think. So I want to volunteer my time to support a charity, but my cyber skill sets are not technical. Would I be of interest to an organisation? Is there something else I could do?
Yeah, so I think we touched upon this a little bit earlier, but I'll give the answer that I was told so many times at Caps Lock. It depends. It depends on what skills you have. It depends on the charity. Presumably not everyone's going to come flocking to SciBaid. There'll be other ones that you might try and volunteer with. It also depends on the kind of the role, which I think is the bit we spoke about earlier. You'll be a volunteer, but you might not be in a role facing a client doing the delivery of consulting. You might be assisting with the internal kind of organisation of the charity and how they actually operate. But yeah, the answer generally is yes. I can only really speak for SciBaid because I've only been involved in a volunteering capacity at SciBaid, haven't been anywhere else. But yeah, as long as you have a skill to offer, as long as there is something for you to do, then yeah, your time and your efforts are greatly appreciated, and I'm sure other charities will be able to put you to good use in whatever capacity it is that you kind of want to be involved with.
And I think, again, that's where finding a charity that you resonate with is important.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think as well, remembering that if it is from a cybersecurity perspective, that again, you don't have to be technical. There are plenty of other functions in cyber, like marketing, like scheduling, like PR, like building things, like talking to customers or people you want to help. There's so much more to it than technical delivery or consultancy. So if there's a passion there and there's a space, or even if you just message and say, I feel I could bring this, I think a lot of people will be surprised where they'd be nabbed and the organisation that you'd be supporting would be really, really chuffed.
For sure. And I think the misconception often, going back to that, is actually most of the work we do is not technical. And that, yes, there is a fair portion of it. It's probably about 50-50 when it comes to things like configuration management, penetration testing, vulnerability management. But I don't think, by and large, the majority of our clients have the maturity to need that really deep technical expertise. A lot of what we do is around audit and assessment, governance, training, implementing processes within the organisation that make sense to them. And often they're not technical because a lot of these organisations are working on cloud-based infrastructure whereby it's mostly supported by an external MSP or it's supported by one person because it's a really small environment. It's not hugely technical. There's not that much going on. But really what they're struggling with is applying cyber to them as an organisation. So when I think about skills that I look for both in consultants at Principal Defence and for volunteers at CyberAid, being a good communicator is the really key thing. And actually having experience in other sectors like education, like the charity sector already, really goes a long way because I've seen it before. Fantastic commercial consultants really struggle to volunteer with CyberAid because they're trying to apply enterprise level control frameworks and strategies to really small, immature when it comes to cyber organisations. So I think there's a lot of room. And like I said earlier, we've benefited so much from support that isn't direct delivery. You know, we've worked with a fantastic lawyer who supported us in our governance processes. We've worked with fantastic marketing people, graphic designers who want to contribute within the cyber industry because they work within the cyber industry, but don't necessarily have that direct delivery experience.
I think if you're inspired, you just kind of need to throw yourself in the deep end. You can offer so much regardless of where you are in the industry. So pop a message, have a look online, see what resonates, see what you connect with. Think about what you can bring and then just put it out there. Because, yeah, like we said, you'd be surprised how many organisations, how many charities are just looking for a bit of help. And it doesn't always have to be, I can give you X amount of money or sponsorship. It can be time. I think the other thing I want to throw out is being totally transparent. I have not had the lived experience of like cyber essentials. I have focused on threat intelligence as opposed to like technical delivery. So whilst I can't necessarily volunteer with those kinds of things, I volunteer by giving my time through like mentoring programs and supporting like that. So again, don't limit yourself to give back to the community, I must volunteer professional services.
Yeah.
There's so much more you can do. Just find a space that makes you happy and sort of ticks that box for you.
Yeah, that's so important. And a big part of where I've seen people come up through the industry, particularly this year, is through that mentoring. And it's not something I'm hugely involved in, and I see it a lot vicariously through Rebecca. But that is a really big part. And I think, Zach, like you said earlier, you've probably inadvertently been mentored by a lot of people at CyberAid because you've been around them and you've worked with them. And I certainly have. You know, when I started CyberAid, I didn't know the first thing about running a volunteer organisation. But I now feel that there are people I can call upon to call and say, do you know what, this is actually really hard. And it's not always fun and there are challenges, but it's hearing things like what you say that makes that really rewarding.
I love a bit of power of the community. So I'm going to jump into the last question for you today, Zach. So it's a biggie. So think deep. If you could inspire one act of cyber giving this Christmas, what would it be?
It would be something which I think would be really boring to open on Christmas Day. I think I would say give the gift of knowledge. Try and teach your friends and family, particularly those in the older generations, things that you know about security which you might find obvious but are kind of those key things that they might not know. it's stuff like that that could kind of make a world of difference to them. Try and help them to understand, give them a demo on a new bit of tech that they might get, or how to set up a new account or something like that. And yeah, go back to your kind of family tech support days, which I'm sure everyone listening has at some point
yeah.
It
been
still
a part
happens
of.
now.
Yeah. I'm going to be cheeky and add a second one
on.
for Christmas. But when buying presents, and I haven't seen as many recently, but I know when the new PlayStation 5 first came out, they were in massively high demand and they're being resold everywhere for ludicrous prices. And I've seen several kind of things online, like screenshots of it, where people buy them on eBay secondhand or something like that, where people have been reselling them, and it says in the description at the bottom, like, it's a photo of it only, but they're still charging the same price of it.
That's jammy.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of those things. I don't know if that sort of stuff still happens. I suppose not for PS5s now because they're available. But for whatever new tech it is, if you're buying it, make sure you know where you're buying it from. Read the description, check returns policies, and get someone to potentially have a look at it before you do buy it, especially if it's a more expensive purchase. I feel like it happens a lot more with tech than anything else. But yeah, just try and make sure it's not a hoax. And yeah, that's my final piece of wisdom.
That's amazing. I mean, I never thought about that. And I like to frequent the online shopping marketplaces, as we all do at this time of year. I think the only other thing I can add to what you've said, and Rebecca's going to love this, so I'm hoping it wasn't what she wants to say, is if you are, particularly in our industry, take some time out over Christmas.
Yes.
I know some people have to work shifts. I mean, I work most Christmases, but I think it's been a really turbulent year for us all as an industry, even if you're indirectly impacted by that. And there are so many studies that talk about the impact of tiredness on cognitive function. And a lot of attacks happen because we're tired, we're stressed, our guard is lower because we're inhibited by what's going on around us. And if you can just take some time out to breathe, to reset, because I'm sure next year will come with its own challenges. And that's not to be pessimistic, but as an industry, I think we need to make sure that we are really actively working to prevent things like burnout. And if you can give yourself a gift this Christmas, it's some time away from cyber. And I think we all need that at times, because it's hard when you're in an industry that's so encompassing to know that there is a world outside of that at times.
That's such a beautiful answer.
I'm learning from you.
Oh.
I would never have said that a few years ago.
I love a bit of resilience. They're building their resilience for 2026.
For
That's a
sure.
very lovely answer. Well, I wasn't going to give that answer. I was actually going to put my mama bear hat on. My recommendation for cyber giving or thinking cyber aware this Christmas is number one, if you're going to buy a techie gift for your child, is it appropriate for the age and for what they need it for?
Probably not.
As an example, I saw online people advertising these bears that have built-in AI. So you can, I know, don't.
Look on Zach's face right now.
The
It's
horror.
Hilarious.
So unnecessary.
I know, exactly. So it's aimed, I think, and I might be wrong, but I believe it's aimed at from ages 3 up. So it's quite little.
gosh.
And you can communicate with this bear, and it leverages AI to be able to communicate effectively. Another one is where you can have a bear, and say your grandparents who live abroad can have a bear, and the child can talk to the bear and send a message. It will then pass over the internet to the parent or the grandparents so they can hear the message and then say something back. And then it goes back and the bear flashes when the message is ready.
Right.
Do they really need that? Is that appropriate? Does it open up lots of other risks? I would say yes. So I would say just think consciously when you're buying tech. Does your child really need it? And I think with that in mind, if you are going to buy tech even, please put parental controls in it. Don't just be like, wait, it's Christmas. Here's your device. We'll sort it out in the new year. Don't hand it over until you know that it's safe, because as soon as you're doing that, you're giving your child the ability to do things you might not want them to be doing, but also others the ability to exploit or have access to your child. So please just think.
The final thing that has sprung to mind is, much like September when everyone's kids go back to school and my entire Facebook feed is someone's child in their school uniform outside their front door, please be careful what you're posting. I appreciate why you might want to post pictures of your children on Christmas Day or them doing fun things over the holidays, but we know, probably more so in the last 6 months than ever, that posting your children's photos online does come with risk and consequences. If you're going to do that, make sure you're not doing it on a public account, and make sure if you are that you've really considered the risks around that, making sure that you're not posting pictures live from locations that are easily distinguishable. Also, if you're going away this Christmas, don't advertise that your house is empty. That is still a problem.
So many people do that.
Right, like, great, you're going to Dubai for New Year. I hope you have a great time. But now me and anyone that might want to rob your house is
Tell
also
us
aware of
after,
that.
babe. Let us know after.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's the sort of things I say is, privacy doesn't let up just because it's Christmas. And
Very true.
I think that's something we all get a bit carried away on. So that's probably my only point to add, which I think takes us to time. So I think we've had lots of fantastic questions today, and it's been really nice to talk about something a bit different from what
Yeah,
we normally
agreed.
talk about. Thank you, Zak, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. There are so many charities and not-for-profits that are looking for volunteer and support. So if you can donate your time, funds or support, or match funding through your organisation, please do the digging and offer that out, because it does make a huge difference. It is expensive to run these organisations. So to end, if you have any other questions relating to cyber careers, the third sector, or any other topic that you'd like us to speak about on the podcast, pop them through to cyberagonyants@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to reply there, or maybe even cover in a future podcast. Happy Christmas! Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please share it with others or post about it on social media using the hashtag CyberAgonyAunt.
As always, a huge thank you to our guests, to Matinee Multilingual, and to you, our listeners. Keep smiling, keep shining, and we'll see you next time on the Cyber Agony Aunts podcast.